going to present today around building a sustainable digital infrastructure for AI and big data. Obviously, we understand there's a huge increase in the technology side of AI and big data. Actually, Bulk themselves are operating at the infrastructure layer, both on data centers and fiber networks. So with this massive growth, our vision is about building out at scale and trying to make sure that the sustainability part of what we do is front and center. So a brief introduction to Bulk. We focus on three core business areas: industrial real estate, data centers, and fiber networks. We combine all of those to deliver a sustainable proposition to our clients. And fundamentally, everything we do has to be sustainable. It has to be infrastructure based. We're looking at doing things that are both scalable and at scale. And we're focused very much on the Nordics as a region and unlocking the potential of the Nordics for digital infrastructure. And here today, talking a bit about data centers, fundamentally what we're building are facilities and infrastructure in the Nordics to unlock the potential for renewable, sustainable solutions. And we're focusing on Norway and Denmark regions at the moment. As well as building the data centers, we're looking to connect those together to provide alternatives for backup, as well as connecting into Europe as well. We've got an internet exchange site in Oslo. We have a mega campus down in southern Norway, and we have a facility which is coupled with a number of key fiber landing stations on the western flank of Denmark, which is a key route into the Western and Northern Europe for a number of new fiber systems. So we offer a range of data center solutions at our facilities. And the aim for us is to build an ecosystem which provides an opportunity for companies looking to deploy infrastructure, particularly AI and machine learning workloads in the Nordic region. The key part of that, obviously, is delivering the connectivity to cater for bringing workloads in and out, both in terms of capacity, and here's a number of fiber systems Bulk either own and operate or are partners in delivering, both unlocking the potential into Europe through a number of systems, and also the Havru system, which is the orange one there, connecting both Norway and Denmark into the western coast of the US. And then within the Nordic region, connecting both our existing sites and also other key locations within Norway and down into Denmark. So obviously having data center facilities as islands is not a great business model, so we're looking at building an ecosystem through high capacity, resilient networks, as well as the data center locations. So just looking at why it's important to consider sustainability, I'm going to focus a little bit about the strategic location of the Nordics and what that affords for AI and big data. But it's important to recognize it goes way beyond that when we talk about sustainability. It's not just the physical, environmental aspects. There's a lot of socioeconomic considerations as well. A lot of those are prevalent in different types of workloads that we're seeing customers deploying. But we focus very much on trying to capture, measure, and then look at improvement opportunities in line with all of the key UN sustainability goals for helping clients, as well as operating our business in a sustainable way. So with a massive and increasing demand for data and the various use cases for AI and machine learning, this is an interesting case that we came across. It's quite an extreme case for natural language processing, but it just goes to show where they were able to measure the compute and overall environmental impact of running that application compared with other more traditional industries which are considered to be big emitters of carbon that we're more familiar with. We also know that the increase in these workloads has a big impact on data traffic as well. So it's not just the actual processing, it's the whole infrastructure that goes to support these. Now, whilst this is an extreme case, the biggest challenge we have is actually being able to measure and accurately capture the environmental impact of these types of workloads. So it's not the case that all of the AI workloads that we see are similar, but this is just an interesting example when we look at a natural language processing project that was run. The other element to consider, which is something which is a challenge, is the socioeconomic benefits of the AI workloads and machine learning that's actually taking place. So a lot of use cases we see are focused on climate impact analysis or predicting weather events, improving the way farming and traditional industries operate. And obviously there's a lot of work going into med tech and other sectors. So there are some huge socioeconomic benefits, obviously, of doing this work. But we believe that there's an opportunity to do that in a sustainable location. There's a lot of data and different views on, I suppose, the impact of data centers on our environment. But there are a couple of key things which we all agree on. That is the electrical consumption of these facilities, which have to reside somewhere, is increasing. This is a few years out of date, the survey, but data centers as an industry represents an increasing proportion of the overall energy mix globally. And the greenhouse gas emissions that these facilities emit is also increasing and will represent a significant part of greenhouse gas emissions globally. As older data centers are decommissioned and replaced with newer facilities, as we see a move to the cloud and utilization and scale plays a part, I think it will represent a lower overall percentage, but it's still a significant impact on the environment. And when we look at the carbon impact of data center workloads, this is a snapshot in time comparing the London market with the Oslo region, where we have our mega campus in Norway. This just takes an example of a 1 megawatt workload. So the case study I talk about is a similar capacity to this. And if you look at running that workload for a year in London versus running that workload for a year in Norway, which is 100% renewable, the impact of the additional carbon emissions is significant. And in actual fact, the carbon emissions of running that 1 megawatt workload in Norway would be the equivalent of 12.84 megawatts worth of capacity. So you could run over 10 times the amount of compute in Norway and still emit a similar amount of carbon emissions than you would in London. So it just goes to show that if you consider location, the actual impact of how these workloads is performed has a big impact. And it's not just the environmental element. Sustainability also refers to, in my view, has to be something which is economically sustainable as well. So we're lucky in the Nordics, whereby we also have one of the lowest energy prices globally. So if you compare, this is taking that case and multiplying it by 10. If you look at a data center workload by a factor of 10 of a 1 megawatt load, the cost savings based on future predicted pricing, again comparing London versus the Nordic region, is significant. And that cost saving can be directly impacting the bottom line or used to invest in additional resources, additional infrastructure. So there's two really key important aspects of the sustainable solutions in the Nordics. One very much focused on the environmental aspects and the other focused on the total cost of ownership. So a couple of key considerations, really. The first one is, in order to grow a business which can support the expanding and increasing amount of processing and data in the AI workplace or workspace, access to green, low-carbon, renewable energy is key. The second thing related to power is scale. And what we can see here is on the southern tip of Norway is where we have our facility in a place called Kristiansand. We have there access to virtually 100% renewable energy. It's actually directly connected to a number of hydro power stations. And Norway itself has a surplus of renewable energy. So there's no shortage of access to green energy, and there's also no shortage of access to capacity. But being able to gain direct connection to that capacity is important. And you can see here in the bottom image our data center location, which is covering 3 square kilometers of land and has access to up to 1 gigawatts worth of power, is directly connected into the Kristiansand substation, which is the largest substation in Europe. So scalability means being able to access large amounts of power And ideally, if you're moving to the Nordics, that needs to be directly connected to green energy. The other important aspect is space. A lot of the established markets within Europe are either power constrained or space constrained. And so what we've been able to develop in Norway is a campus which covers 3 square kilometers. It's zoned into 10 separate land parcels, which gives us the ability to scale beyond what we believe is certainly the short to medium term requirements for compute. And here you can see in this image, we're operational today in zones 1 and 2, and we're in the process of developing zones 4 and 5. And that in itself is around 600 megawatts worth of space for developing high-performance computing environments. And what we're aiming to do here is match the requirements for different types of customer workloads. So we cater for higher availability enterprise computing, looking at redundant power, resilient cooling infrastructure, as well as providing higher density and lower resilience applications for certain machine learning and AI workloads. So we're looking to match what we provide from a scale point of view with our customers' infrastructure requirements. And we've certainly seen, as we talk to more customers, that that's an important part of how they plan to expand and grow their business, moving into water cooling, different technologies for higher and higher density compute. And just to finalize a quick summary, really, what I was looking to do is just explain how we help one particular customer in delivering their sustainable infrastructure in the Nordics. So we were faced with a number of challenges with this particular customer. They're established operating in the London market, operating some critical facilities. They were looking at a more sustainable solution and hopefully a lower cost. And at the same time, we were dealing with the challenges of the impact of the beginnings of COVID. So they conducted a site search comparing actually a number of the Nordic countries, looking at both scale, potential, sustainability metrics, and the total cost of ownership, as well as for kind of catering for higher density workloads. As you can see here, they were looking to deploy very GPU heavy infrastructure and some significant storage, and run that at fairly high levels of utilization. And we had to facilitate all of the normal due diligence, the technical considerations, as well as the site tours, all remotely during the COVID pandemic. And what we've actually provided to them is a turnkey solution to some extent. Moving infrastructure out to the Nordics, if you're not present and operating there, can, on the face of it, be something that's a bit challenging. Actually, what we're able to do is facilitate and almost act as a concierge service to match up what issues you might have or challenges with either our supply partners or delivering directly services to you ourselves. And that is including optimizing the design for physical hardware and infrastructure, supporting the procurement and the shipping, acting as an importer of record to enable goods to enter into the Norwegian market. And then in terms of design, optimizing that for both the scalability and density of the compute. And here we delivered a solution that can provide 30 kilowatts plus actually for high density compute in this customer's case, using a chill water high density in-row cooling solution. And the customer's actually never been to site. We've operated this for over a year now, supporting both the implementation as well as on-site, supporting all of the smart hands, remote hand services for them as an extension of their operations. So actually providing your own infrastructure and scaling is possible, and we can, with our partners, support customers who aren't present in the Nordic market. As I say, having done that through COVID was a challenge, but essentially what we're able to kind of give customers a chance to do is either take more direct control over infrastructure and look at how you can start to drive down cost and improve the scalability of some of your infrastructure solutions. Equally, some of our existing customers might be partners that we could help facilitate those who don't have and operate your own infrastructure. If you want to know a little bit more about this particular case, we have some case studies available at the back just as you head out, and also we're on stand 252, so feel free to come and talk to myself, my colleagues Warren, or Reese. I am standing between you and a bit more networking and coffee, so I am going to wrap up there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.